The children are not mine.
What? No, that's impossible.
The DNA report is right there.
Oh my God.
I still remember the look on my husband's face the night he asked me a question that changed our lives forever. Tell me the truth, Vanessa, have you ever cheated on me? The glass I was holding slipped from my hand and shattered on the kitchen floor. I thought he was joking. I had no idea that for 6 months my husband had been living with a secret so painful that it was slowly destroying our family. Before I continue, please like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. Also tell me where you're watching from. I love seeing people from different parts of the world listening to these stories. My name is Vanessa Hartley, and this is the story of how my husband and I discovered that the 2 children we had raised and loved for nearly 20 years were not biologically ours. And the truth was even worse than anyone could imagine. I met my husband, Ethan Hartley, when we were both 24 years old. I was working as an architect in Seattle, while Ethan had just inherited part of his family's real estate business. Our families were wealthy and well-known in Washington state. My parents owned a chain of luxury hotels. His parents built one of the biggest construction companies in the city. People often called us the perfect couple. We married after 2 years of dating. 2 years later, I gave birth to our son, Mason. 3 years after that, our daughter, Lily, was born. We had a beautiful home overlooking Lake Washington, expensive vacations, and everything money could buy. But our greatest treasures were our children. Mason was 19. Tall, handsome, and studying engineering at university. Lily was 16. Bright, funny, and obsessed with painting. To the outside world, we were the perfect family. Then one rumor destroyed everything. It started at a charity gala. I was speaking to my boss, Daniel Crawford, the CEO of our architecture firm. We had just finished discussing a new hotel project. Suddenly, I noticed Ethan staring at us from across the room. His face looked strange. Cold. Angry. I walked over. Everything okay? I asked. He forced a smile. Yeah. Everything's fine. But it wasn't. The next morning, he barely spoke to me. Over the following weeks, he became distant. He stopped holding my hand. Stopped kissing me goodbye. Sometimes I would wake up in the middle of the night and find him sitting alone in the living room. I asked him many times what was wrong. He always said the same thing. I'm just stressed. I believed him. I shouldn't have. One afternoon, Ethan's friend Mark visited him. I was upstairs when I heard my name. I didn't mean to listen. But then I heard the words that made my heart stop. I saw Vanessa and her boss having dinner together, Mark said. They looked pretty close. There was silence. Then Ethan spoke. You think she's cheating? I don't know. But people are talking. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Dinner. I remembered immediately. 3 weeks earlier, my team had gone out after a successful project. My boss was there. Several co-workers were there too. Someone must have seen only a part of it. I walked downstairs immediately. Are you serious? I asked. Both men looked shocked. Ethan, you think I'm having an affair? He looked away. That was all the answer I needed. I cried that night. I had never been unfaithful. Not even once. But from that day forward, our marriage changed. Ethan became a different man. He started drinking. He stayed out late. Sometimes he wouldn't come home until midnight. The children noticed. Mason asked me one evening, "Did you and Dad have a fight?" I forced a smile. "No, sweetheart." But he didn't believe me. Neither did Lily. The tension inside our home grew worse every day. Then one day, Ethan came home looking pale. His hands were shaking. He went straight into his office and locked the door. I knocked several times. He wouldn't answer. Hours later, he came out looking like a ghost. I asked him if he was okay. He simply nodded. From that day onward, everything became worse. He stopped speaking to the children. He became cold toward Mason. He ignored Lily completely. Sometimes he would stare at them with sadness in his eyes. I couldn't understand it. One evening, Lily came into my room crying. "Mom, does Dad hate me?" The question broke my heart. "No, baby. Of course not." But even I wasn't sure anymore. A week later, I found Ethan drinking alone on the balcony. There were already 3 empty bottles beside him. "You have to tell me what's going on," I begged. He looked at me. For a moment, I thought he was going to speak. Instead, he stood up and walked away. I cried myself to sleep that night. I didn't know that my husband was carrying a secret that had shattered him completely. A secret hidden inside a small envelope. Inside that envelope was a DNA report. A report that said Ethan Hartley was not the biological father of either of our children. And because of that report, he had started to hate the very family he once loved. For 6 months, Ethan Hartley carried the DNA report in the inside pocket of his jacket. He read it almost every day. The words never changed. Probability of paternity, 0%. For both children. Every time he looked at that paper, his heart broke all over again. He wanted to confront me immediately, but fear stopped him. What if I admitted to cheating? What if our entire marriage had been a lie? The questions haunted him day and night. That was why he started drinking. That was why he became cold and distant. That was why he could no longer look at Mason and Lily the same way. But despite his anger, something didn't make sense. The children looked so much like me. Mason had my smile. Lily had my eyes. How could I have cheated and somehow had 2 children that looked exactly like me? Still, the DNA report kept whispering the same terrible answer. They are not your children. One rainy Friday evening, Ethan came home drunk. I was sitting in the living room waiting for him. The clock had just struck 11. The children had already gone to bed. As soon as he walked inside, I stood up. "Ethan, we can't keep living like this." He loosened his tie and tried to walk past me. I stepped in front of him. "No," I said firmly. "Tonight, you're going to tell me the truth. I'm tired, Vanessa. And I'm exhausted." I shouted. He looked surprised. I rarely raised my voice. "For 6 months you've ignored me, ignored our children, and treated this family like strangers. What did we do to deserve this?" He remained silent. Tears filled my eyes. "If I've done something wrong, tell me." Still, he said nothing. I grabbed his arm. "Please, Ethan. I don't recognize the man I married anymore." Suddenly, he exploded. "You want the truth?" he shouted. "Yes. You betrayed me." The room went silent. I stared at him. "What? You cheated on me." I felt as though the floor had disappeared beneath my feet. "No. You had an affair with your boss." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Ethan, that's ridiculous." "Is it?" he yelled. "Yes." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a folded envelope. Then he threw it onto the coffee table. I opened it. The moment I saw the words, I nearly collapsed. DNA test results. My hands trembled. I kept reading. Then I looked up at him. "What is this?" "The truth." I shook my head. No. I'm not Mason's father, he said, his voice breaking. And I'm not Lily's father either. I could barely breathe. This can't be real. I thought you slept with another man. I looked at him in complete disbelief. You've believed this for 6 months. Tears filled his eyes. What else was I supposed to think? I sat down slowly. Everything suddenly made sense. The drinking. The anger. The distance. The coldness toward the children. All of it. I looked at him and saw a broken man. But I was also angry. Very angry. You should have talked to me. I couldn't. You punished our children for something they knew nothing about. He lowered his head. For the first time in months, I saw guilt on his face. Then I spoke softly. Ethan. I have never cheated on you. He looked up. Never. You expect me to believe that? Yes. The DNA report says otherwise. No, I said quietly. The report says you're not their father. It doesn't prove I was unfaithful. He frowned. I continued speaking. If I had an affair, why do both children look so much like me? He didn't answer. Think about it. He remained silent. Then I said something that changed everything. What if the test is wrong? It's not wrong. What if something else happened? He stared at me. I slowly stood. Let's do another test. He looked exhausted. What difference will that make? Not yours. What do you mean? I swallowed hard. Test me. The room became completely silent. What? Do a maternity test. He blinked. You are their mother. I shook my head. We don't know that. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Then he laughed nervously. This is ridiculous. Maybe. Vanessa. But if you're not their father and I never cheated, then something impossible happened. His face slowly changed. I could see the realization forming in his mind. I grabbed his hand. Please. The next morning, we went to one of the best genetic laboratories in Seattle. The technician asked routine questions and collected samples. The results would take 3 days. 3 of the longest days of our lives. Neither of us slept much. Neither of us ate properly. We barely spoke. On the 3rd day, the laboratory called. They asked us to come in immediately. That frightened me. People usually received results online. Why did they want us there in person? We sat across from the genetic specialist. He looked nervous. Mr. and Mrs. Hartley. My hands began to shake. He opened the file. Then he looked directly at me. The results are highly unusual. My heart pounded. Please just tell us, Ethan said. The man took a deep breath. The maternity test indicates that you are not the biological mother of either child. For several seconds, nobody moved. Nobody breathed. I stared at him. Then I laughed. It had to be a mistake. It had to be. But the doctor wasn't smiling. Ethan looked as though he had seen a ghost. What did you say? He whispered. The doctor swallowed. Genetically, neither of you is related to Mason or Lily. I felt the room spinning. My ears rang. I looked at my husband. He looked at me. Then the horrifying truth hit us both at exactly the same moment. If neither of us was their biological parent, then whose children had we been raising for 19 and 16 years? And where were our real children? I don't think I'll ever forget the silence inside our car that day. Neither Ethan nor I said a single word after leaving the laboratory. The world suddenly felt unreal. For 19 years, we had celebrated birthdays, wiped tears, attended school events, and tucked our children into bed. And now we had been told that they were not biologically ours. But even worse. Somewhere out there were two children who shared our DNA. Children we had never met. Children who had grown up calling someone else mom and dad. That night, neither of us slept. At 3 in the morning, I found Ethan sitting in the kitchen. He looked exhausted. For the first time in months, he reached for my hand. "I'm sorry," he said softly. I looked at him. For everything. Tears filled my eyes. "I should have trusted you." I squeezed his hand. "We'll get through this." He broke down crying. "I treated you terribly. I treated the kids terribly." I wrapped my arms around him. For several minutes we simply held each other. The next morning, we called the hospital where both of our children had been born. It was the same place. St. Gabriel Medical Center. At first, the administration refused to believe our claims. But after we sent copies of the DNA reports, they immediately scheduled a meeting. By noon, we were sitting in a conference room with the hospital director and 2 lawyers. The director looked nervous. "Mr. and Mrs. Hartley," he began, "this is an extraordinary accusation." "We're not accusing anyone," Ethan said. "We want answers." The director promised to investigate old records. We left the hospital with little hope. 3 days later, our phones rang. The hospital wanted to see us immediately. When we arrived, the atmosphere felt different. Very different. The director's hands were shaking. He looked as though he had aged 10 years. "We found something," he said. My heart nearly stopped. He placed 2 old files on the table. In 2007, there was a system failure in our maternity ward. I stared at him. "What kind of failure?" He swallowed hard. "There was confusion involving identification bracelets for 2 newborn babies." The room became silent. Then he continued. "Your son, Mason, may have been switched with another baby shortly after birth." I covered my mouth. "And your daughter," he opened another file. "There is evidence that another identification error occurred 3 years later." I couldn't breathe. 2 mistakes. 2 different years. 2 different babies. Ethan stood up. "You're telling me this hospital gave us the wrong children twice?" The director lowered his eyes. "We believe so." I felt tears rolling down my face. 19 years. 19 years of living a life that should have belonged to someone else. The hospital had already contacted the other family involved. The family had agreed to meet us. The following Saturday, Ethan and I drove to a beautiful farmhouse outside Seattle. I was trembling. I didn't know what to expect. Would they hate us? Would they blame us? The front door opened. A middle-aged couple stepped outside. The woman was already crying. The moment I saw her, my knees nearly gave out. Standing beside her was a young man who looked exactly like Ethan. Same eyes. Same smile. Same height. Ethan stared at him in shock. "Oh my God," he whispered. The woman approached me. "I think," she said through tears, "I think your son has been living with us." I burst into tears. She hugged me immediately. Her name was Amelia Brooks. Her husband was Jonathan Brooks. Their son, Ryan, was 19 years old. And he was almost certainly our biological son. A DNA test later confirmed it. Ryan was ours. But the surprises were not over. A few days later, we met the second family. The moment their 16-year-old daughter walked into the room, I began crying again. She looked exactly like me. She had my eyes, my smile, even the same dimple on her left cheek. Her name was Chloe. And she was our biological daughter. The DNA test confirmed it. For a long time, everyone simply cried. There was no anger. No accusations. Just heartbreak. Two families had lost their children and never even knew it. The hospital accepted full responsibility. A massive lawsuit followed. The settlement was enormous. But honestly, no amount of money could return the lost years. You cannot buy back first words. You cannot buy back first steps. You cannot buy back birthdays and school graduations. Those moments were gone forever. But then something unexpected happened. One evening, Mason and Lily sat Ethan and me down. Mason spoke first. "So, what happens now?" I looked at him. "What do you mean? Are we still your kids?" The question shattered my heart. I immediately grabbed his hands. "Of course you are." Lily began crying. "But we're not biologically yours." I pulled her into my arms. "You became my daughter the day I held you in the hospital." Ethan sat beside us. "And you'll always be my children." Mason started crying too. Even after everything. Ethan's eyes filled with tears. "I'm sorry for the way I treated you. I was confused and hurt." Mason hugged him. Then Lily joined. Soon all four of us were crying together. A few weeks later, we met Ryan and Chloe again. Slowly, both families began spending time together. There were awkward moments. There were painful moments. But there was also healing. The children all became friends. Birthdays were celebrated together. Holidays were spent together. Instead of one broken family, something beautiful happened. We became one large, unusual family connected by an unimaginable mistake. A year later, Ethan and I stood in our garden watching 6 young people laugh together. Mason, Lily, Ryan, Chloe, and their friends. Ethan slipped his hand into mine. "We lost 19 years, he said quietly. I nodded. "But we found something too." I smiled. "What?" He looked at our children. "We learned that family is more than blood." I leaned against him. He was right. Because the truth is this. Being a parent isn't only about DNA. It's about every bedtime story. Every scraped knee. Every hug. Every sacrifice. Every moment of love. The hospital's mistake changed all our lives forever. But it also taught us something priceless. Love doesn't come from a laboratory report. Love comes from the heart. And sometimes the family you choose and raise can be just as precious as the family you share DNA with. If you enjoyed this story, please like, comment, and subscribe. Tell me where you're watching from because I love hearing from people around the world. And remember this lesson. Trust the people you love, communicate before making assumptions, and never let anger destroy the family standing right in front of you.